Now, the unrest is affecting the entire country, not only KwaZulu-Natal. Over 100,000 jobs are at risk following the looting and arson. Damage to infrastructure and businesses around the province is estimated at over 15 billion rand. That's the damage, right, and the cost that is estimated. So how much will this impact the rest of South Africa? Let's speak to Economist Dawie Roodt. Dawie, thank you so much for making time. When exactly are we going to start feeling the impact of the current disruptions and interruptions on our economy?
Well, in fact, we're feeling it already. And that's the reason why you and I are talking to one another. Well, let me give you one simple example, is that I just went out to see if I can get some diesel to fill up my vehicle, and I couldn't get diesel. I'm staying in Pretoria, for example. And I spoke to a friend of mine, and he's an expert on fuel, and he said that it's not necessarily a lack of fuel itself, but it's a problem with logistics. Apparently, there are many transport vehicles available to transport diesel, as an example, but people are simply too scared to transport fuel. So the reality is that in the case of Pretoria, and I guess of most of Gauteng, is that within a couple of days, 2 or 3 days, that we are literally going to run out of fuel. If that is the case, then of course the most important economic hub in South Africa, which is Gauteng, will come to an end, or will come to a halt at least, which will have a huge impact on the rest of South Africa. We know of the damage. You've just reported about the damage in KZN. We can calculate that damage. It is probably going to be in many billions of rands and many thousands of jobs that will be lost. But the real damage to the South African economy is not what's happening today, but it's what's going to happen over time. The damage that is done to brand South Africa is simply incalculable. And that is going to be significantly more than the damage that's being done to the South African economy as it is at the moment.
So there's no doubt that this is a waste of the progress that we've made over the last couple of years. You can argue over the last couple of months as well, when you look at the economic reforms that were announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa, energy reforms, when you look at SOEs and the private sector coming into play. What does that do then to the business confidence? The president is always on a drive to get more investments. What does what's happening currently do to business confidence?
Well, obviously business confidence will be shattered by this, but you just mentioned that there were some economic reforms implemented. And I agree with you. On the surface, that's certainly what it looks like. Like, for example, allowing the private sector to produce 100 megawatts of electricity. But my problem that I have is that these sort of reforms were introduced only after there was simply no other option available. And even if the private sector is allowed to produce 100 megawatts of electricity now, will they actually invest that kind of money in the economy? I don't really think so. Many of the other reforms, like, for example, the state-owned enterprises, I think that happened far too late. It should have happened far earlier. So yes, I think on the surface there are some changes as far as macroeconomic policy, or some reforms that have been announced by government the last couple of weeks or so, but that is too little and far too late. I am very concerned about not only the economic future of South Africa, I'm very concerned about the political future of South Africa as well. And what we need now is a very strong political leadership. And the first step that the president needs to take is not economic, it is political. And the president needs to take control of the political situation in South Africa, and he has to send out a very strong message that he's simply not going to tolerate any form of lawlessness. And I'm not referring to people on the street, that of course included as well, but any form of lawlessness, including people around him. So reshuffle cabinet if necessary, and if there's any hint of possible wrongdoing from any one of his ministers, as an example, get rid of that individual. The president needs to lead by example, because people are looking at our political leaders and say, listen, but they are doing all sort of bad things. They have been involved in state capture and nothing happened to them. Why can't I go and help myself with a new fridge or a new TV as well? Nothing's going to happen to me either. We need a political leadership that can actually lead by example, and it's the president's duty to do that.